Very good morning. Greetings to all. I hope all of you are doing good. So, I thought let's have a talk this morning. It's a beautiful morning. But before we do that, let's start the day with the gratitude for this beautiful, pleasant sunshine that is here. There are thousands of things that one can be ungrateful for in India, like traffic noise, pollution, dust, lack of social space, privacy. But you know, there are many other things that one can be grateful for in India. That is a very close knit family structure, the changing seasons where one experiences extreme heat to extreme cold. Yes, one can be grateful because during the transitioning it's quite pleasant, and the cold here is not that cold as you see in Western countries or in some other parts. The temperature is not that extreme where life becomes difficult, where survival becomes difficult. So survival in India is not that tough, speaking in terms of climate. So let's begin this day with the gratitude for being alive, simply for being alive. Right now, one of the greatest joys in our life is that we are alive. We may say that life is pain or pleasure or alternating, as Nisargadatta Maharaj puts it. But the thing is, every sunset has a sunrise, and after every sunrise, there is a sunset. So one definitely can choose how one aligns with a particular belief. There may be many things in our life that may not be going according to how we plan in life. And if life has taught me something, is that you can plan all you want, but life will always throw a curved ball. Life will always throw a googly, and you will be stumped. Plan all you want to plan, but life has its own plan. And all this human organism can do is to accept the cycle of unpredictability, of pain and pleasure. There is no getting out of this, and this itself brings a lot of peace, a lot of calm. The human object is subject to many forces, and it is so vast. The number of these forces is so huge, one cannot account for every variable. But the problem is, we try to control life, we try to fit things according to our perspective, and that is when we experience suffering. So what is suffering? Suffering is trying to adjust all the variables. Suffering is trying to account for all the variables in life and trying to adjust them according to one's own preferences. I prefer life to be a certain way. When I was young, I wanted to be a civil servant. And I thought that If I take care of all the variables that are happening around me, somehow I will create an environment that is conducive for that goal. However, life had its own plan. So, I was trying to avoid television. I was trying to control all the environments. I was trying to avoid meeting people and isolating myself completely, studying for hours, trying to get hold of people who had knowledge about that subject. And I was trying every possible means I can, trying to do things to control my mind, to make myself calm, so that I could achieve that endeavor, my goal. Now, it is not to say that you're not to do that. Do, by all means, do what you think must be done in a given moment. But once you've done it, once you've accounted for all the known variables in your life, even then, know that life has its own plan. Life does not go according to our personal preferences. And acceptance of that is peace and happiness. We all would love to be financially secure. We all would love to have harmony in relationships. However, the nature of life is such that these things undergo a roller coaster ride. There will be highs, there will be lows, and one can really do nothing other than to accept when things are even at its extreme. By all means, do whatever you think will give you peace and comfort in the moment. But know that despite all you're doing, things may not happen as per what you plan. So what happens? What happens when we live with that attitude? Because Ramesh Balsekar said that happiness is not to be found in the flow of life, but one's attitude towards life. So when one's attitude is that I am not living my life, but life is being lived through me, through the instrument that is me, then things become simplified and actions become spontaneous. And spontaneous actions do not have the element of doership. What that means is, if a reaction happens in a given moment, we do not berate ourselves with remorse and guilt the next day. Why did it happen like this? Why did it happen to me? Why does God not love me? Why is not God creating the right environment for me to be successful in my work, in my relationships? Then all these demands begin to wither away. One experiences clarity. One experiences harmony with what is, things as they are, the unpredictable flow of life. But when I say that I reacted in that given moment, then I constantly live with never ending guilt and shame about myself. I say that I did this action and I should not have done this, I should not have done that. then I constantly live with guilt and shame, and that shame often finds projection in multiple ways. I was just discussing with a friend of mine about the movie The Ten Commandments, and there is a beautiful line in that movie which actually stuck by me. I saw that movie as a child, and I remember we were in school, and it was a boys' school, so we were all grouped and taken to the cinema hall, and the entire cinema hall was booked for us. And we would, you know, we would shout, and we would, whenever we saw the scenes of miracles, like Moses splitting the water into two, to allowing people to pass, there was a lot of excitement about it. We were very young. I I recently again watched that movie just to refresh my memory, and I came across this line which was a beautiful line. It says, when the Pharaoh mother asks Moses, "Do you not feel shame that you were born to a Hebrew mother and not to the royal family?" And Moses, which I think is played by Charles Heston. Please correct me if I'm wrong. Let me know who played Moses. I think it is Charles Heston, but I may be wrong. Let me know if that is correct. Well, he says, I don't feel shame because I don't have shame. And that line was a fresh insight for me. It was a beautiful insight, amazing insight. You can only give what you have. You cannot give what you do not have. So, what do we have? First of all, let's investigate what do we have within us. Do we have compassion? Do we have empathy? Do we have love and kindness? Or are we storing, registering shame, insults, mockery, passive aggression, guilt, a lot of guilt? If we are constantly registering insults and living with that, then we are storing all these things. And then we live in this paranoia that the entire world is out to get us. We live in this fear that humanity is horrible, it is bad, that people are unkind. And that further reinforces that guilt, that shame. It further reinforces negative beliefs. So, if one looks at oneself, if there is deep introspection on one's own nature, you will come to this realization that it is not the actions of the other that hurt me, but it is that the hurt lies within me and is invoked whenever it is God's will. But that hurt, that pain should not turn into suffering, because there is a difference between pain and suffering. Pain continued in horizontal time, pain registered in memory as an action of another, is suffering. There are many people in this world who have had horrible childhood, who have undergone abuse, who have undergone a lot of trauma, and yet they carry immense understanding, immense knowledge, and their actions are never projections of their inner state. In fact, their inner state is so clear. Despite traumatic childhood, their inner state is so clear that they do not even think about that. Forget about projecting, they do not even think about that. I have a friend in United States, and she's over 60 years old, and she has undergone a, a very, very rough childhood where she was abused multiple times and also ended in a marriage with a person who was very abusive to her. Yet, this woman is phenomenal because she does not live with that trauma, that shame. She does not remind herself that she's a victim. She's amazingly, she has a great sense of humor. And whenever she writes to me, we correspond through email sometimes, and whenever she writes to me, she asks me questions about Advaita, non-duality. I see that she always writes something which is hilarious, and you know, she always ends with a joke, and that is something amazing to me. Even though what she writes, the questions she asks are quite serious, and for some they would be horrific, but at the same time, she does not let this become her story. Therefore, mind sticking to a story and creating an enemy out of the world is living in suffering, constant suffering. This sense of separate self or identification with the personal self, that is me, which thinks it is separate from the rest, is by nature pain and suffering, constant pain and constant suffering. So when I live with this belief that I am separate from the rest of humanity, I find enemies. And this separation between me and the other is what the scriptures call as suffering, because it lives in horizontal time. The me is the thinking mind, which moves horizontally as I am this, I am that, this happened to me, that happened to me, they do not listen to me. It is all outward movement. The me mind does not have the capacity to introspect and reflect on its own actions. When the me mind introverts and sees what it's doing, it really comes to a conclusion that it is a piece of fiction that never does anything, and that things are simply happening. So where is the element of free will in this? Let's talk about free will. Well, we have the will to make a choice. That has been said by the master. We have the capacity to shoot the arrow. But whether that arrow will land on the target or how close it will land to the intended target is not in our control. So living with that attitude, I do what is required for me to do in this world without worrying about what the outcome will be, without worrying about this or that, without worrying whether my actions will lead to so perceived my preferred outcomes. And in most of the cases, what you will find is that In majority of the times, the outcome is never what we desire. There are few moments here and there where something gets fulfilled, and that gives us hope that maybe I can do this to change that. The ego is notoriously known for doing repeatedly that which does not work. That is why even Eckhart Tolle calls ego unconsciousness, because ego does not have the capacity to reflect. Ego is trapped in its own story, and its story is I am this, I am that, this happened to me, that happened to me. It lives in that realm and it enjoys in that realm. Ego does not want freedom. Ego does not want any liberation. When someone asks me why am I not getting the eternal principle, my first question is like, who wants to get the eternal principle? Who is so concerned with getting it? Why can't we just simply live and enjoy life? Why can't we take things as they come, as they arise? But we get so caught up, we feel that no, things have to be a certain way. My enlightenment has to be a certain way, because we think that we have complete free will to act as we want. Well, certainly we can act, we can shoot the arrow, but whether it will land on the target or not is not in our control. So the more we try to loosen the bonds of trying to control others, the more free we feel within. And this trying to control can be very subtle. And we all do it to some extent. We, even the most wisest of us, do it sometimes. That is the flow of life. It can come as anger, crying. It can come as being passive aggressive. I don't believe in this term passive aggressive, but since it is so widely used, those are all ways we try to control the environment. Does that make us a bad person? No. Good and bad is the idea of the mind. People who are controlling are not evil people. Evil is also a concept in the mind. Nothing can touch you if you do not register, if you have the capacity to reflect on yourself. Nothing can hurt you. Pain in the moment will always be caused. There is no stopping of the pain in the moment. But to feel that I am the victim is to say that the other is the doer of their actions. To say that he or she hurt me. To say that they deliberately did this to cause me pain is to say that the other is acting with complete volition. That means to say that I have complete volition over my life is to say that I am greater than God. And that is what ego is, because ego believes that it is greater than God. In fact, ego wants to destroy God and put itself even above that. When I say God, I do not mean an entity that is powerful, a separate entity that is powerful, that is passing judgment on its creation. That is a concept of the ego mind. When I say God, what I mean is this consciousness which is animating this entire reality. This consciousness, which is a free painter, which is painting reality as it chooses to. Why it chooses to paint in a certain way, we will not know. Why some people are born with defects and deformities, we do not know. Why some people experience so much suffering in life, we do not know. Why some people become so unconscious that they do not even hesitate to take lives, we do not know. Ramesh Balsekar would say, just as God creates sages, where the thinking mind is destroyed by God, not by the sage, but by God, so does God create the disturbed minds too, the psychopathic minds too. God creates Gandhi, God creates Hitler. Duality is the interconnected link of opposites. And acceptance of duality is peace. Acceptance of the link of opposites is peace that leads to non-dual awakening. It is not that non-dual awakening is something separate from duality. The duality has to be completely accepted. Only then there is a way beyond the mind. Because still we are in the realm of mind, we are splitting everything into subject-object relationship. We are splitting things into good and bad, moral and immoral, virtue and vice. That is why we see the opposite as the solution to all of our problems. So when we are attached to a human being, we see getting detached as the solution, which is told to us by swamis and sages and gurus, that detach. But then we get attached to detachment, and that even causes us more pain. So it is not about using force and seeking the opposite as the solution. It is simply about accepting this dualistic link between attachment and detachment. Because in life, it is not in your control who you get attached to. Therefore, when you did not choose to get attached to someone and life happened through you, who are you even trying to get detached from? So if attachment and detachment are interconnected link of opposites, you understand that they are not separate. They are one and the same movement. The movement of the me mind, the thinking mind, the ego mind. The mind that says I am separate from the rest. Our whole suffering lies in the belief that I am separate from the rest. There is no separation. There is no separation. Everything appears in consciousness. Tell me one thing that has appeared apart from consciousness. We take this waking dream too seriously. Many sages have said this is a dream, but we take it too seriously. We take life too seriously. Whereas masters say that it is a joke. So if you take it as a joke, it doesn't take away the pain, but it does simplify life to quite an extent. Now, simple does not mean easy. Simple does not mean easy. Life can be extremely simple, but yet one can experience a lot of turbulence. And that turbulence is experienced because we think that we have free will. The only free will we have is that we have the ability to make a choice. That I give it to you. That is a discount, a concession given by the masters. That you have free will to make the choice. But once the choice has been made, once the arrow has been released, you have no control where it hits and what is the outcome. Living with this attitude is freedom, is peace. There is nothing else. There is no permanent bliss. There is no enlightenment. There is no liberation, no freedom for the personal for the separate self. The separate self coming to this conclusion that it is a piece of fiction, which sounds very ironic, and it is. But it coming to this conclusion that it is not the doer and there is no me is liberation. It does not mean that life becomes better. Life may more or less continue to be the same. But what becomes different is our attitude towards life. Okay, it's a beautiful morning. I thought I will share something from the heart, so I did. I guess we'll end it here and I will see you another time. I wish you all a great morning and a great day. Take care.